welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler, and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor Barri Griffiths. Now today we're joined by Kristine Flook. Hey Kristine, how are you doing?
Hey Barry, I am fantastic and blessed.
Well, we're blessed to have you here and have you back for a second episode because we just recorded the first one. So anyone who hasn't listened to that, make sure you go back because you'll really enjoy it. It was a really fun and informative interview, a lot of great stuff in that one. So go back and listen to that one. But in that one, you mentioned a deal that you'd recently done in Daytona Beach. So we thought, okay, well, let's make this piece about a deep dive into that one because it's a big deal. Sounds like a really interesting one. So do you want to give us a bit of an insight into high-level insight into the deal, what it looked like, what, all that good stuff about the deal?
Fantastic. Thank you for asking me. Thanks for allowing me to share this time with your listeners, and hopefully I can bring some value. And if any time I can be of help to anyone, it's a pleasure. This particular property is 384 units in Daytona Beach. My broker, which is my business partner, her name's Janet Crusette. We were prospecting like we do every day, prospecting for off-market owners to either work with as far as with our investors and or to broker the deal. This particular time was October 2020-ish, maybe October to November. We were reaching out to large asset operators, and this particular acquisition gentleman was getting back to us and mentioned, hey, we don't just have this here in Daytona, we also have properties in other states. And Janet and I were very excited because we were like, wow, it's not just South Florida. Maybe we can do deals in other places. And oh my gosh, he has this and he has that. Well, we were following up probably about every 3 days or so. I was thinking, man, maybe we should follow up every 24 hours because when you get something exciting like that, you got to run. And next thing you know, we weren't hearing back. And it was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? It was mostly done by email. And then we hear back, hey, I'm getting ready to leave the company, but I'm going to put you in touch with someone else. Well, that's someone else that was in the acquisition department for this particular company was somebody that I had already met. And they are local in South Florida. And we had met through social events. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's you. And then that person was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's you. So right there, we were so even more excited because now we're working with someone that we have a relationship with. And in this business, mostly men, it was a lady and me. So we were both ladies and we're now working together. And it was just like, wow, this is going to be great. So the opportunity, there were two of them on the table from this particular company. One of the assets required a time frame that needed someone to move like within 60 to 90 days. And then the other one, which is the one that we recently closed in Daytona, didn't have a time clock on it. So we tried working on both, wind up getting one. So not bad, 50%, right? Out of two. So I knew a few people that would be the right person to call for this particular acquisition. This is somebody that I have been working with for a little over 2 years, and I was helping them source land acquisitions to build for self-storage. We had gone down the road, made some offers on some properties, and it just didn't work out. And when I contacted this particular company, this is a recapitalization in the Daytona property. So the operator's equity fund was looking to cash out, move on, and close their fund. So they needed another equity fund to come in and take over that position. So I only had to make actually a handful of phone calls. And when I was able to reach this particular company, he was like, wow, this is like great. Why is it great? Because I saw this company speak at an event in New York about 8 years ago. And when I saw this gentleman speak on the stage, I said to myself, I know I'm going to work with this company no matter what it takes, eventually I'm going to work with them. And I'm the one that brought that opportunity to this gentleman. So when we did a phone call, conference call with the operator and the fund that I brought into the, I guess the equity, it was like synergy. And just hearing the story, do you have no idea what you've just done? You just created this. And did I tell you how I met this? So when we got on the conference call, and we were talking to the operator. Hey, do you remember meeting me? No, I don't. Well, I remember seeing you, and you were in New York and this. Oh, I remember that event. And you, so it just kind of like, here I am talking to an acquisitions who's a lady. I've already met her. Then I connect the operator and the equity, and they knew each other from before. They got that synergy going on. So it just really, when you talk about real estate and you're talking about these kinds of deals and these size, it's always just, what's the condition? How old's the roof? You know, when's the last time's this? How's the asset management? What's this? How's the parking lot? But when you get all these kind of components to come into the play and everybody's just kind of in harmony, all I can say is it was God's intervention, in honestly, in my whole opinion. And it took a little time to close on it, but I think we got it done we got it done in July of this year. And this particular fund, the highest one they had raised was 4 million. And this was, $42 million acquisition. And it was, triple the amount that they had to raise. And we just were able to get it done. I'm just so excited to, I guess if you would have it on my resume, but moving from just South Florida and being able to stretch in other areas of Florida has just kind of put me on the map, urbanized properties.
Very cool, very cool. So was there any challenge being, in South Florida and this being in Daytona, which is how many hours? 4 or 5 hours away? 3, 4?
Yeah, I would say probably about 4.5 or so.
Yeah.
And I would say no, because actually the operator is located in South Florida. They have properties throughout the United States. So it really wasn't an issue because of that they were in Daytona, or should I say the asset was in Daytona. It just, everything was just right. Everything was just right.
Yeah,
And they wanted to work with the group that I brought to the table. So the timing, again, there was no specific time clock, which obviously helps in any kind of, commercial transaction.
Yeah, it seemed like that deal was just meant to be, right? It was between everything. It just seemed like it was meant to be. What was, in terms of the deal itself, what was the opportunity there? Were rents on the market? Was it not well managed? Was it, what was it?
It was an equity fund that was looking to close. So They wanted to move their equity out. So we needed bring in a new equity partner. And so I was the one that sourced the equity. So I guess it's kind of like an equity broker. And when I was talking to the group that did the deal that I brought in, it was like, do you realize what you've just done? What have I done? You beat out all these equity brokers for this opportunity. I said, wow, this is fantastic. I didn't even know I was being brilliant, and I'm being brilliant. So that was great. And now it's kind of put me on the map with them. So they know that, because I was sourcing I wouldn't say a lot, I was sourcing several acquisitions for them, and just kept going up to the plate and hitting the ball, bringing a deal, and nothing. I was always striking out. So I'm like, oh my gosh, when is one going to hit? And it was glad that it hit. So now we have, the future moving forward. Now I can bring them other properties. Now they know kind of how I work. Now I know how they work. And we're just solid people that can create a future.
Very cool. So just to make sure that I understand, the operator stayed in place and it was just their place. So one equity fund sold their equity in it. Did the operator have any equity? No, or they just asset managed?
They have some equity into it. It was a recapitalization. So the fund that was there before wanted to close their fund, so they needed to replace it with another equity fund. And so that's what we brought in. We brought a recapitalization.
Right. And then how was that structured in terms of, was there a sale? Was there a purchase price?
There wasn't a sale, and I can't really go into everything about reality, but it wasn't a sale, it was a recapitalization. So there's basically an equity fund that goes out, somebody comes in and takes their position, And that's how everything got done.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the first time I've heard of that, to be honest with you. I was so that's really interesting that that's
It
done.
was, it was
Yeah.
because I'm used to sourcing real estate, just buyer, seller, do a deal, or be an investor and either be, I'm mostly an LP in the investments that I'm in right now. But to be able to, like I said, kind of add that to my resume, now I kind of know what that's like and I can structure other deals in the future, not just with them, but with other people.
Yeah, yeah. And out of interest, and you said you can't talk about everything, but that initial conversation with that equity group, how did that go? I'm interested because there's certain, like you mentioned in the previous episode, that you have a skill set about keeping people talking and talking to these. It wasn't necessarily a seller at this point, but essentially that's what they were. How did that conversation go? And how were you able to put yourself in that position for them to take you seriously and want to work with you?
He wasn't the first person that I spoke with. There was a group that I knew specifically that had recently bought in Daytona, and I reached out to them immediately. But they were looking to buy and they weren't interested in recapitalization. So I was like, oh man, obviously I was like, oh, so now I just keep moving down the list. But what I do is, let's just say you and I were to work together. Let's just call it, a 50-unit building. And I send you an email. Hey, Barry, I came across a 50-unit building. It's in the area you're looking for. We'll just call it Daytona for this scenario example. And it's this price. Here's the unit mix, 1 and 2 beds. If I happen to know the NOI, I'll give you these kind of what I call a picture of what the opportunity looks like. And if that's agreeable to you and seems interesting, then we move forward to the confidentiality agreement where, hey, I'm bringing this to you. You're going to work through me, that kinds of things. We cover our bases. You're aware of who I am. You're aware who this is. And then from there, I provide the full, OM, all the numbers, and they really, really dig in. And then you decide, hey, let's move forward. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, so I was asking more about the equity group that was selling, that was doing a
I don't know who the
recapitalization.
other equity group was that stepped out. I just
Okay.
know the people that I brought in. I don't know.
Uh,
Remember, I was prospecting for properties for owners looking for them to sell. And when they contacted me back, hey, we're not interested in selling. Hold on one second.